Okay, we are recording, this time with sound. I just went about 20 minutes before I realized I've got to turn on the mic. Gotta love it. Anyway, Chapter 5 of Return of the Jedi. For the most part, because I've already talked through some of this, I am actually fairly happy with the chapter, but there are some issues. There are definitely some issues that I do want to go through. But we're going to go in order, which, so it goes from the Rebel team is on the planet, on Endor. It is a planet. It's not a moon. They said that the planet vanished. It's a planet. Anyway, Vader goes to see the Emperor, and then is told to go to Endor and wait for Luke to come to him. This is all fairly important, actually. I do want to talk about that. And then them getting caught in the trap. Also, Leia being found by Wicket. But the Luke, Han, Chewie, the droids being caught in the trap and being taken away by the Ewoks. That's all what the chapter spans. Okay, so Leia jumps on a speeder bike, Luke jumps on behind her, and they fly off to go after the escaping Imperial scouts. Okay. There's a couple problems here. One is, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It's poor writing, it's weak writing, because it describes that part of the reason why Leia is able to catch up to the Imperials is because she's a better pilot. And it even says because the talent runs in her family. I actually flipped back to Empire Strikes Back because it's only after Han is taken away that Leia, as I recall, even sits in one of the front chairs for the Falcon. It's the only time that she's ever near piloting, but Chewie pilots. Like, it refers to her being in Han's seat, but Chewie is the one working at the controls, and when they then go to rescue Luke, which it's different from the movie, in the book, Luke is actually falling from Cloud City, and they have to dive down and do that. It describes Chewie doing this maneuver. There is never a time then, at least I can't recall any, where she has ever demonstrated piloting anything at all. Now, Luke, he is an accomplished pilot. He's a speeder pilot. We've seen that both in A New Hope and then in Empire Strikes Back with his land speeder and then the snow speeder. And he's an accomplished fighter pilot, mostly with X-Wings, of which he's had at least 2. Potentially, he can also fly bigger things, but that's not been demonstrated. Their father, Anakin, has also been described as such a great pilot that in A New Hope it is even said by Blue Leader, who's Red Leader in the movies, if you're even half as good as he is, you'll do fine. They're going to fight the Death Star, and it's like, you'll be fine if you're half as good as he is. So that's the level Anakin's at. So we do have this scaling there. That's right. There's also, Luke had never been in, and this will come up in the next point. Luke had never been in the X-Wing before, and there was some concern there. But when it was mentioned to Blue Leader that he flew T-16s, it's like, oh, you'll do fine. It's the same manufacturer. They basically use the same controls in all their stuff. So the X-Wing, you'll know exactly how to use it. Don't worry about it. Okay? So just, there's reasons why Luke has skill and familiarity with the craft that we know he uses, right? Nothing like that for Leia, but, oh, she's a better pilot than them because it runs in her family. It's like, we actually don't know that. We really don't. And we can't assume anything about her based on Luke either, because they're fraternal twins. So basically, it would be no different than if they weren't twins. They were just born years apart, like, most siblings are. And it's like, in my case, I have skills and experiences radically different from my sister and radically different from my brother. And the same is true for them with me and, yeah, all that. So we can't assume that she has any level of competency with piloting. And yet it's oh yeah, she's better than they are, who would be trained. We have no reason to believe she's ever touched a speeder before for piloting purposes. But the scouts who would be trained on this, and in theory, if they're scouts, you think they'd have to be above competent at it, she's better than them. And I'm just going to say this in case there's anyone concerned, because I know it kind of comes up with some stuff. The idea of a girl boss moment, no, that is not at all what I think is going on here. I genuinely think it's somebody's the author was just thinking, well, yeah, the Force runs in the family, so does good piloting, so obviously she's going to be a good pilot. That's fine. I have zero issue with that. But you don't write it as, well, you don't write it in the way written there, which is that, oh yeah, she's a great pilot, you just know that. It would be much better if it were as she's doing this, it's just coming naturally to her. That she didn't know at first, but once she's like got her hands on the controls and actually moving, she's really just getting the flow of it, and from that, she's able to start overcoming them because of the natural talent passed on to her. That would have been fine. That would have been perfect. Not what they did. It's like, oh yeah, she's just a great pilot. Didn't you know that? No, we didn't, because it's never been said before. Okay, another thing. So this relates to the controls. Why is it a single prominent switch? Because it says center. Luke tells her center switch to jam the communications. Why is that a button? That shouldn't be a button. And understand, the way you would jam a signal is you basically just broadcast something, noise, most likely, at that frequency, right? Now, granted, this is science fantasy. We don't necessarily need to believe that they're using radio, but let's go with that because that's almost certainly what was in mind. Or at least we've got nothing else to go by. So, why is there a button to do that? I mean, there'd be a button to turn on your radio. There might be a button to control the power. Well, or a knob to control the power, and you'd crank that up and just try to make sure that it's noise going in. Okay, that can work. So long as they're on the same channel, that will jam the signal. That's not a single button, though. It also shouldn't be a single button that's prominent in the center. That would be a small button somewhere else, such that Luke would have to be like, it's this one. No, it's that. And just push it, because why not? Why couldn't he reach around her to do that? It's not like she's going to be complaining about it. I'm saying she's focused on piloting. He knows what button to press. Why is another problem. Why does he know what button to press? There's no reason to believe he has any experience with these speeder bikes. But if you're like, you need to jam them, you need to, and she's like, and she could just go, what button? Just staring at the console, not knowing what all these are, and then he can just reach around, hit the button, and they're good. Yeah. I get technical. Okay, so now fast forward a little bit. She has taken out the one guard, fallen on the ground. Wicket has found her. She then actually has to kill two guards. In the movie, it's just one who comes up next to her, and then Wicket spies. But no, she actually shoots one. The other guard comes behind, and then Wicket stabs that guy, and then she shoots him, and now they can go off, do whatever. When going off following Wicket, she is taking in Endor around her with the trees that they describe as being 1,000 feet tall. We're leaning heavily on the science fantasy portion here, because 1,000 feet tall, I don't think that there would be any wood that wouldn't just collapse under its own weight. I was like, that's legitimately part of the reason why we needed to get to steel to make skyscrapers, because we couldn't, from wood and concrete even, build up high enough without it collapsing. Now, true, these trees are described as also being as wide as houses, but it still is... That's no, that's not here. I'm actually going to look what the tallest tree is on Earth. So give me a moment. Okay. The tallest tree on Earth is one of the redwoods, which that's actually where they filmed Endor, measuring about 380 feet tall. So we're talking almost 3 times taller than that. It's estimated to be between 600 and 800 years old, which is nothing. 10,000 years is very old. But that's also the point being made there, that these things are actually older than the Empire. I don't know if I don't recall if it's said older than the Republic, but will outlive the Empire and the Rebellion as well. And she's reflecting on that. And the way it's written, I think that we're supposed to interpret that she's being in tune with the Force there, the life energy from all that is around her. And it both humbles her, making her feel so small, but at the same time, she is still a part of it. It even has in there how she feels a space part, and a part, as in part of it, at the same time. It kind of confuses her. But I think that is her having a natural talent with the Force and starting to sense that around her. And what I find interesting about this is a juxtaposition with when Luke exited Yoda's home on Dagobah after Yoda had died, and is then seeing Dagobah and is kind of getting a similar sense, especially with the cycle of life and death there. But he actually pushes that away because basically he's too sad. He doesn't even want to think about how this is all how it works. Which is kind of disappointing that that's what they did, but I mean, you'd want him to have greater maturity, but it's also true she's not facing that exact situation. But it's like an interesting juxtaposition there to show these two that are siblings, so in many ways similar, in many ways different, but having such a different experience when in kind of a similar situation. Of course, one is a marsh that, unless you're a member of the Addams family, you wouldn't really want to go walking through one of those. Or somebody very interested in the biology there, and the other is walking through a forest. There actually plenty of people would want to walk through. It's a relatively lively but comfortable forest to a degree, I think. Anyway. So then after that, we have the whole Vader goes to see the Emperor, and it is interesting how it talks about that, because this is a lot of it plays out just like in the movie, but we get inside their heads because it's a book, we can do that. And it is actually pointed out that the Emperor is actually bothered by the fact he didn't sense Luke on Endor. Vader did, but he didn't. And it then takes a moment to reflect on how no one is infallible with the Force. It also states that the Force is not all-powerful. I'm not sure why they're making that statement. Actually, I don't know what benefit there is by having that statement there. I mean, I'm okay with the idea that the Force is not all-powerful, but you don't need to state it. There's no value there. Sorry, I just noticed a typo in the notes. So despite this, though, the Emperor is like, all right, go to Endor and wait for him. It's like, what? The whole Vader being like, wait, it has already described because we're in his head. He has a yearning, a drive to go to Endor and find Luke. And it's being told, no, Luke will come to you. And it's kind of interesting how it goes from describing the Emperor as, I didn't know he was there, to, okay, go and get him. Go and bring him to me. It's like, but you didn't know he was there. No, but you already have this plan on what to do. And it's like, I think arguably it's just the true master plans in a lot of literature, at least a lot of fiction that I'm familiar with, they're actually really simple plans. It's like the Emperor just knew, well, you're going to bring Luke before me, and Luke is always going to come and find you. We know that's going to be the case because he has compassion for you. He has to come and find you. So it doesn't matter if he's on Endor or not. He will ultimately find you, and then you will bring him to me. So very simple stuff. But another thing, though, that is kind of disappointing is even all the way back in New Hope, and definitely also in this, is talked about how Vader wants to replace the Emperor and become the Emperor himself and take over the universe, all that. And yet he doesn't recognize the Emperor not being aware of Luke, despite the proximity just on Endor. He doesn't see that. There's no comment there about how he might be degrading more than I thought. Perhaps the time to strike him down and take over is approaching. And it would be completely appropriate to do that, but for some reason they didn't. Yeah, so then we got... This is one of those things that's not really in the movies. So I think that the novelization is being loyal to the movies, not to the books. But in Empire, Yoda's training for Luke did involve Yoda throwing things at him that Luke would then have to grab the lightsaber, turn on, and cut through. And a comment at one point was even made, yeah, a true Jedi would be able to cut through that 7 times. You only cut through it once. Keep working. So then how is it that when the Ewok trap is sprung, Luke doesn't react in time for anything? I can understand, and you could very easily explain that yes, he couldn't draw his lightsaber, ignite it, and cut through the netting before everyone was grabbed. I can understand, before it grabbed everyone. I can understand that because it might have been he was too close. If he had tried to do that, he would have hurt somebody. That's fine. You can definitely do that, but why couldn't he even grab his lightsaber? So this actually is kind of a problem because his skill level should be higher than what is demonstrated here, because it has been demonstrated previously. And he did cut through some of the stuff that Vader threw at him during their fight in Empire. So it's like he should be there. But no, we're just ignoring that. It's also interesting how he seems to never actually use the Force right here to do anything. And I'm not entirely sure why. Because it's not been explained that he's trying to suppress it so Vader won't find him. They could have done something, but they didn't. Yeah, so it really is just the whole... He should have at least had the lightsaber in his hand instead of it being stuck there and asking, can somebody get to it? And then there's the whole... R2 frees them. They're surrounded by Ewoks, which... I don't think you quite understand why you set traps like this. Also, what were they even trying to get? It's like they put up meat. It's like, okay, so you're trying to catch a carnivore. What carnivore? We've not actually established that there's any of that on... I mean, the Ewoks themselves are an anomaly on Endor for how it's been described, which is just a forest moon. It's a whole bunch of flora everywhere. There's nothing about fauna, but the Ewoks are here. It's like, well, what are they trying to catch? But there's also, you don't necessarily stand by and watch a trap. You would actually set multiple, leave, do something else, come back, and then see what you caught. So why are there... I think it even says like 33 or something right there. It's like, that's not how you do this. I mean, what is the point of the trap otherwise? I mean, you wouldn't bother with a trap. You would just lay an ambush. You know, and it's like, okay, they're going to go there because that's where we put the food. And then once they, go to it, we run up and stab them. I mean, yeah. Anyhow, so it's after that, and the whole 3PO, he actually does tease that 3PO likes being a god, even though he's not, supposed to be one. That's against his protocols. But it's like, I can understand Luke telling them to let them be disarmed. Talking to Han and to Chewie to let themselves be disarmed. Although why Ewoks would understand... Because Luke didn't fully go to his lightsaber. Why would the Ewoks understand that the lightsaber is a weapon? Han does draw his blaster such that he doesn't use it, but such that, okay, they may be able to understand there's a weapon. But still, just... I can understand allowing the Ewoks to disarm you. That makes sense, because you're not trying to hurt them. You don't want to hurt them. You're just trying to work through the situation to figure out, okay, how can we resolve this? And the fact that 3PO does have some ability to communicate with them helps with that. And there was also with Luke, he can technically crush them at any time if he wants to. But in saying that aside, it's like, okay, I can understand disarming, but why did they allow themselves to be tied up to poles and then carried away? I mean, just think about the logistics here. The Ewoks, well, maybe they already had the poles, but you know what? No, they shouldn't. What they should have is the tools to make the poles, because there's plenty of wood around for them to do that, plenty of vines around them to make bindings as well. Although bringing the bindings with them would also have been fair. So it's like, but why carry large poles with you going out hunting in a forest? It makes more sense you carry the tools, conserve your energy going out there. If you catch something, now you start cutting down the poles to carry stuff away. But it still is you have to cut down 3 poles, Luke, Han, 4, and R2, because all of them are tied. Though R2 might have 2 because of his odd shape. You can't bind hand and feet and then run the pole through to carry, like is shown in the movie for the 3 human-shaped ones. And 3PO they build a chair for and carry him. That takes time. And they're just standing, and so we can believe that Han and Chewie are comfortable just standing there. I mean, Luke maybe, because he's definitely trying to just play this out, see what happens. But Han and Chewie are just going to stand there and be like, why do you think they're cutting down those poles? Why do you think they're making those ropes? Why do you think they're coming over here with those ropes? These 3-foot nothing things that I can literally step on. What do you think they're going to do, Luke? Luke? What do you think I'm not going to... What do you think I'm going to do to them? I mean, it's like, this is absurd. That they would allow this to happen to them. And there's also, why would the Ewoks try? That's another actually very, very good question, is why would the Ewoks try? It's like, they can walk. You have spears on them. You make them walk where you want them to walk. It doesn't make sense to bind them either. I mean, maybe conversation with 3PO. Maybe that's part of the reason why. But then write that. Then explain that. And it's also, at this point, still unclear if 3PO does fully understand what's being said, because it's in the whole... I think it's right there, yes. Han asking, what did you say to them? Yeah. What did you say to them? Hello, I think. I could be mistaken. They're using a very primitive dialect. I believe they think I'm some sort of god. But, yeah, and then it's like, on their shoulders, they carried their 4 prisoners, Han, Chewbacca, Luke, R2, tied to long poles, wrapped around and around with vines, immobilizing them as if they were wiggling larvae in coarse, leafy cocoons. It's like, why did they let that happen? I mean, they're all far larger than the Ewoks. All the Ewoks are going for them are their spears. That's it. But it's like, Chewie could probably punt one of these things 100 feet. And Luke has the Force. This doesn't make sense, and it actually does need to be explained. And that's probably the thing I am most bothered by in this chapter. Because, I mean, it's what I started with the whole Leia, just saying that she's a great pilot when that's never been established. That's okay, you wrote this poorly, but we can fix that. There are ways to fix it. The jamming switch, again, that's, I'm being very technical there, but it still is no, you can jam from there. It's just the way they're describing it is not right. But again, we can fix that. He's like, all of it is we can fix this, until we get to, why do they let the Ewoks? It's like, there is no explanation. There is no reasonable explanation. There's no rationale for why they would allow that to happen to them. Because, I mean, it's like, even if Luke were to allow it, it still is Han wouldn't. There's no way Han would let that happen. He would walk in. He would let himself be prisoner if Luke says, nope, we need to play this out as prisoners. Han would do it because Luke is telling him to do it. Right? That's fine. But Han is walking. He is not going to let himself be tied up. So, yeah, it's... And remember, this is going to take time. Because there's also... I mean, they have to be large poles, too. Because remember, the Ewok's only 3 foot tall. But Chewie is tall. The other 2 are probably average height for men. I don't remember ever saying how tall they are. But Chewie is probably like 2 meters tall. He's taller than all of them, so that's what, about 6'6"? Even if we put Han and Luke at 6 foot apiece, that still puts them, double an Ewok's height. So they have to use very large poles for this. Even larger for Chewie. They have to then... I mean, it's not... You also think the Ewoks would be like, okay, we can't do that. There's no way we can carry them. Because, potentially they could be 3-4 times heavier than an Ewok. Yeah, no, none of this makes sense. It very much feels like we're back in Empire, where it's like, yeah, well, we just need this to happen, so we're just going to do it, instead of we're doing this because this is what actually happens for the story. And there's nothing wrong with, they could be bound, they could be tied together then, and are being dragged through, even, being carried through, or they could have it be, crap, I know that there was some book that I read that actually described where basically you still have the poles, but they're tied to the poles, and the poles are serving as a weight. So they're having to essentially carry their own chains that the Ewoks put them in. You could do that, and they're just walking, following behind, well, either behind 3PO or in front of 3PO. Obviously, it's got to be one or the other. But I just mean, like, either a procession behind to be like, hey, look at this golden god that we found, and then these prisoners, or this is our golden god, and these are the gifts that, we will make to him, so that's why we're putting them in front. I mean, it's... Either way, that would be far more reasonable, and doesn't necessarily have to change much of what happens later. Yeah, because by what we know in the movie, the whole, Luke using the Force to make them think that 3PO is an actual god, so that then they will listen when 3PO tells them that they must be freed. He could still do that standing up. And it could even be that whatever they're carrying is so heavy that basically if the Ewoks hit them at their legs, they will collapse and not be able to pick it up, at least not easily. So it's like so many ways you could do it that it makes sense that this could actually be what the characters would allow to happen to them. But instead we get them being wrapped up like cocoons, which takes time, and there's 3 of them that they have to do this to. Anyway, see you next time for Chapter 6.